So what we're going to be doing today is doing the no BS Reg I tier list. Every single time I make a tier list, people agree with it, they disagree with it. I'm not going to have any room for disagreement with this tier list because what we're going to be doing is adding all the mons that are legal in this double restricted Reg I format to a tier list. We've even fleshed out some of these middle tiers for like a B, C, D, and F tier. And then what we're doing is going over every single one of these mons, all of their base stats, all of their common items, talking about common teammates, common playstyles, so you guys can get a good understanding of where these Pokemon rank. I always think it's so crazy when we see people making tier lists for a format like the day it comes out when they have like no experience with any of these Pokemon. I'm someone who's been playing this game for a really long time. I started in VGC 2011, I've played VGC 2016, I played VGC 2019, I played the restricted formats in Sword and Shield. I've used every single one of these Pokemon, even the base form Calyrex, the base form Kyurem and Necrozma, even the Cosma M looking thing over here. In competitive battles, I have championship points earned with most of the Pokemon on this list in official tournaments. And this is going to be my tier list where I rank every single one of these mons, and they're going to be ranked in their tiers. I know a lot of my tier lists, I don't actually rank them in their tiers. So I'm going to do my best to actually make sure everything in the A tier is organized by the stuff at the top of the A tier would be the strongest stuff in the A tier. Stuff in the bottom of the A tier is going to be the weakest. So hopefully you guys like this. I think I have pretty good takes when it comes to a lot of these things. A lot of the tier lists I make at the very start of formats tend to be, for the most part, what is the tippy top of what you guys should be using. So hopefully you guys like this stuff. This is going to take a while, so we're just going to get right into it. We're going to start things off with Groudon. Groudon is the very start of our list today, and I think a lot of people, when they take a look at Groudon, they like to compare Groudon to something like a Koraidon, and everyone's like, Koraidon's so much better, it has dragon typing, so it's really good, it is really fast, right? It's 135 base speed. Nah, bro, like Groudon is like the cruise control for cool. If there was like a Mario, like a default character for like what you need to be like a usable restricted in a double restricted format, Groudon technically has all the tools. It gets access to Precipice Blades as one of its signature moves. It has 85 accuracy, but massive 120 base attack. It hits both mons. So this is before the massive like Shadow Rider, Ice Rider power creep. So this thing's really, really good. It gets access to Heat Crash, which you can use to compare it with the Sun Boost that you get from the Drought to just like do a bunch of damage. Now, I will say Heat Crash sometimes isn't as good in a restricted format or a double restricted format because a lot of it's based on weight, and there's a lot of heavier mounts in these formats, so you have to understand the weight of the opposing Pokemon you're hitting with Heat Crash. But it's great into like Shadow Riders and other stuff like that, Flutter Manes, what have you. Other common moves people you like to use on Groudon, sometimes you see like Swords Dance, sometimes you see like Substitute. I like Substitute Groudon a lot because you can block those Intimidates. You also see sometimes like just Rock Slide or stuff like that. That's common. Groudon usually likes to carry Protect. Every once in a while you can see Vest and stuff like that too. Groudon historically like has been a really, really good restricted in a lot of metas because even if you bring it on Kyogre and take that water weakness, if you set the Sun, it mitigates a lot of that. And so Groudon's always been viable, but I think Groudon gets a big boost in Scarlet and Violet. Items like the Clear Amulet are just much better than the White Herb that Groudon used to use back in Sword and Shield and the last time we had double restricted. And honestly, like, the fact that you have Terra as an option to change your Terra to whatever you want, actually maybe get that Fire Stab on your Heat Crash, mitigate a lot of damage, it's really, really good. You say you wish you had Flare Blitz. Heat Crash is fine. I think that I would probably still use Heat Crash because Groudon is so heavy. But yeah, I think that Groudon gets a big boost actually going into a double restricted format. And Groudon, in my opinion, is one of like the best anti-meta answers in early Reg I. I think a lot of people are really gravitating towards like Ice Rider, Miraidon teams. And if you utilize your Groudon with the right Terra, like a Fire Terra or like some sort of Terra that makes you resist one of the Miraidon or Ice Rider and gain like immunity or have a neutral matchup to the other, you can kind of just sit there and like pin the Miraidon, force its Terra, and then just like do 30-40% of the Ice Rider, just have a really good matchup. So I think Groudon's a good mon, has 90 base speed, it can be used in Tailwind or Trick Room. And I think that like another thing that like Groudon gets a huge boost from, I want to briefly mention this, is all these other mons that come out with Photosynthesis. All of these mons just existing in Scarlet and Violet is just a a buff to Groudon, because now Groudon has a bunch more mons it can enable. You can pair it next to Roaring Moon and go for fast Tailwinds. You can pair it next to Brute Bonnet and go for, Redirection, Rage Powders, or Spores. You can pair it next to Flutter and go Icy Wind. There are so many different things you can do with Groudon, and I think it's a really, really solid mon. So I think to start this list off, you're probably thinking like, man, this guy's like a lot of good things to say about Groudon. It's obviously S tier. It's not S tier. I think it's going to go in the A tier, and I think by the time we flesh out the A tier, it's going to be definitely near the bottom of the A tier, or maybe if we want to move things around, like the top of the B tier, because again, the problem with Groudon is it's a slot machine. If you miss your P-Blades, you lose the game. It's very susceptible to Intimidate. Usually it likes to double dip that fire typing, so you can get really pinned by like big water mons. And Groudon is one of the few restricteds that actually can take L's to like non-restricted mons. All those Paradox Pokemon I just listed that have the photosynthesis that Groudon's enabling, well, you enable your opponent's Pokemon that have that as well. So I think Groudon's a good mon, but at the same time, there are like a lot of problems with it. You got to get a little bit lucky, and if Groudon falls below half, like he's basically going to get KO'd by most things. So that being said, I still really do like Groudon, and I think it's a very good mon, but there are obviously going to be better picks out there. So that being said, let's take a look at our next Pokemon on this list. That's going to be Kyogre. So Kyogre historically has been S tier in like every single double restricted tier list that there's like ever been. And Kyogre's always been so good because like you could pair it next to like a Rain Dance mon or like a Rayquaza in previous formats. Just get rid of the weather, even if you're making like a neutral weather, like an airlock or something, or like making it like hail or sand or something, and you just pin their Groudons. That's why Groudon isn't always the best. It's always been good, but even if you're like setting the sun to mitigate the water, you still take super effective damage. So Kyogre has always been like the cruise control S tier restricted. I will say that a lot of these photosynthesis mons and the mutual boost of like sun in general gives Kyogre a little bit harder time. Also note that Miraidon existing as a Pokemon that wasn't around before gives Kyogre like a really, really hard time. That being said, Kyogre and Groudon have very similar stat spreads. They're both from Gen 3. You see Groudon has like the 140 boost in defense. Kyogre has the 140 boost in special defense. Other than that, they're basically the same Pokemon. And I think what makes Kyogre special is like realistically, it has two signature moves. Yes, it has the Origin Pulse that everyone knows misses just as accurately as Precipice Blades, but it also has the Water Spout, which you can use when you're at full health. Now, one cool thing about Kyogre that you don't see Groudon utilize as much is the usefulness of like full speed Kyogre. Being able to go like a Choice Scarf Kyogre is actually still really, really good. I played in a couple tournaments recently utilizing Choice Scarf Kyogre here. I think I have another one come out in a couple days where I was able to make top cut with Choice Scarf Kyogre early in Reg I, and I think it's still a very good mon because it lets you like pin opposing like Shadow Riders and stuff like that. Just by the fact that we have like massive damage, like double dipping our Water Terra, setting the Drizzle, you can just come out and pop things in one hit. As the meta develops and as we really flesh out the partners that these Pokemon are going to have, what we're going to see is like a lot more probably like AV Ogres. We're probably going to see, a lot of like Lefties Calm Mind Ogres. Those are like really, really solid options here. Because it also still gets things like Thunder and Ice Beam and a bunch of other really good moves as well. I think Kyogre is just a very, very standard, like, good mon. That being said, what's a tier list looking like? We're filling it out right now. I think Kyogre is still a really, really good mon. If we were to compare it with, like, some of these other mons on this list, things like Dialga and Palkia definitely, like, give Ogre some problems. But if you take a look at, like, Reshiram, Ho-Oh, Mewtwo, the Kyurem forms, things like Lunala and Solgaleo would have to click Wide Guard. Zacian and Zamazenta, Kyogre's great into them. It forces Wide Guards on Zentas, which you can just pull like a Hydro Pump into. It's decent against both of the riders. I think Kyogre has a better matchup into most of the commonly good restricteds. Kyogre's going to have good matchups into them. So I would put Kyogre also in the A tier. I don't think it's good enough to be in the S tier, but I would definitely put it above Groudon in the A tier. It's taken a step back, but I think Kyogre commands a lot of like board presences. There's not that many moves that can one-shot Kyogre. That's another thing I really wanted to talk about. Let's think about every single move that these restricteds have that can one-shot Kyogre. And what everyone's going to think is like, oh, Electro Drift. That's obviously it's Electro Drift. And all you got to do is just flip on that Terra, block the Electro Drift, and they went like all in on your Ogre. Yes, it costs you your Terra, but you can still just like O-Pulse, do like 30-40% of the Miraidon, KO potentially the Miraidon's teammate, and that's a win for you as the Ogre player. So it turns your biggest weakness into your biggest strength. I think Kyogre is a little bit susceptible to pivoting. It can't pivot in as easily to block moves because it's so important that it has to maintain its HP if using a Water Spout set, and it also falls prey to some of the same problems that Groudon has in that Origin Pulse is just not very accurate. Yeah, I think Kyogre is really good. No, I don't think it's not that it's been power crept. I think that just the surplus of reliance on sun with photosynthesis. Also, Raging Bolt existing just gives Kyogre like a really hard time, let's be realistic. So it's like those new mons, it's not that it gets power crept, it's been like actively like countered. So like those are my thoughts on it. Lugia S tier, I wish. But I think Kyogre's a good A tier mon. Again, it has 90 base speed. All you really need to let these mons function to outspeed Shadow Rider and Tailwind is just 12 points. Same thing for the Groudon. If you want to get yourself up to like 120, you could be outspeeding Genies after a +1 or -1. And if you wanted to be like full speed like Scarf or Rooney Dooney, you definitely could still do that. All you really need is like 150 to outspeed like Shadow Riders with your Scarf or Adamant Urshas and stuff like that. And I think Kyogre is like a very, very safe mon. If you're looking for like mons you can just add to your team, they're going to give you like good matchups against other really good restricteds that are going to be placed at the top of tier list. Groudon and Kyogre are some great mons to add. So let's go into the next one. Rayquaza, the last of the Gen 3 restricteds. So Rayquaza is a bit of a weird mon. You know, if we think back to like every other format Rayquaza's ever had, Rayquaza used to be built like Mega Ray with like, I remember when I got like Dragon's Ascent, it was like so good. And Mega Ray used to like, it used to set its own weather that cut like all the damage to flying mons from like all super effective moves. So you could just like sit in front of rock slides, sit in front of blizzards and stuff like that. I think Rayquaza is still pretty good. I think nowadays the way people like to use, they like to run it now is with like Clear Amulet. Some people like to run it with like Sash. I'm a big fan if you're playing Close Sheet of Covert Cloak Ray, because I think it's big bait for like a lot of those fake out mons. I think Ray is definitely usable. If you're using Sash, it falls prey to the same sort of things Kyogre does in that it can't really pivot in to utilize its really good defensive typing. Kyogre and Rayquaza both have really, really good defensive typing and just straight water and then dragon flying. You can't pivot in that Ray to block close combat, or you can't pivot in Ray to block that like Heat Wave or Flare Blitz because you'll lose your Sash. That's one of the reasons why I like the Cloak as well, because you can swap in and you can block those like secondary effects from like Flare Blitz. I'm getting ahead of myself. The way most people like to play this mon is they like to pair it with like normal Terra. They put like extreme speed on it. And then instead of like a Dragon Dance that you used to see in previous formats, they like to go Swords Dance. I think like realistically, it has 5 base speed more than Kyogre and Groudon. So it's actually going to be faster than most of the restricteds. If you take a look at like most of the mons on this list, they're all 90. Like Kyogre, Groudon are 90, Palkia, Dialga, Palkia is 100, I think, but Dialga's 90, Reshiram, Kyurem are 90, or Reshiram, Zekrom are 90. A lot of them are 90, right? So being able to 95 is actually kind of nice. We're not even going to be talking about the Meteor Beam thing here. You can go Special Ray, you can go Mixed Ray. There's a bunch of things you can do. I think Ray's commonly paired with like Shenpao, and I think most people like to really compare Rayquaza with like normal Terra E-Speed stuff to like a Dragonite, which is a non-restricted, which we're actually still seeing a lot of people utilize, like normal Terra, E-Speed, Dragonite with like Inner Focus or Multiscale in these formats. Now that being said, do I think Ray's bad? I think Ray's actually kind of usable, but you have to be very particular in how you use it. I think you could pair Ray with Ogre, just like Wolf did in 2016, and get a lot of good results. I think you can build a little bit of a bulkier Ray with like Swords Dance. I think that's still very viable. Basically, Ray's like the perfect closer to a game if your other restricted has a ton of pressure. So I wouldn't be pairing Rayquaza with other passive restricteds like Dusk Mane or Ho-Oh. I'd be pairing Rayquaza more with like a really aggressive restricted, like a Scarf Water Spout Ogre, or like a Shadow Rider. Something that you make them take the bait on your main restricted, you protect with that restricted, mitigate the damage, get that free Swords Dance from the fact that their other restricteds pulling away threat from your Ray, and then from there you have 2 like powerhouse restricteds. That being said, I think I'm going to put Ray in the C tier for now. It'd probably be near the top of the C tier or the bottom of the B tier. We'll see as we flesh out the tier list. I think it's a good mon, but I think that like whenever you're playing Rayquaza, and there is no like ifs, ands, or buts about this, you are playing a race to the finish. You're trying to get up that Swords Dance so you can E-Speed, or you're playing like Banded E-Speed. You're playing some sort of game around E-Speed, and those games can only last so many turns. If someone wants to come out with a really, really cool Ray balance team with like Ice Rider, that'd be like really anti-meta, but another thing here is like Ray's not adding any support to an Ice Rider. It can only really support like Kyogre, Groudon, and Koraidon. And again, all 3 of those options are like race to the finish, come in that one turn, use the airlock to like pseudo take away your opponent's weather so you could just blow them up with your other restricted, kind of play it like a weird aggressive E-Speed Weezing, right? And so I think that like that sort of play style will eventually fizzle out, and Ray will just kind of be left sitting there thinking like, man, I wish I was a Dragonite with Multiscale right now. Those are just my thoughts. It might be able to move up to the B tier. I think that Ray's much better on closed sheet ladder than open sheet. And I'll be doing my best to like talk a little bit about my thoughts on these Pokemon in both of those formats. Terra Normal Ray is good for switching into Astral Barrage, but I think we might have a more Rayquaza format eventually. See, I don't think so, because you have to, if the Shadow Rider player sees you go normal, they're not going to just throw Astrals, even if it's in the back, right? You're the one as the Ray player going normal Terra, doing all those things and wasting those resources. And again, if a Shadow Rider player has Astral, they might also have an Indity with Expanding Force, and you're just like auto losing yourself there. So yeah, I think Ray's like a C tier mon. I think it takes a lot of your resources away. It's a little bit of a Terra hog. It's a little bit frail, and there are probably just better options. So that being said, let's move on to Dialga here. Can you say when the vid from the Reg I team fixing comes out? Sometime this week. It comes out sometime this week. So let's take a look at Dialga here. I think Dialga's a pretty good mon. I think Dialga is a mon that most people write off. So let's take a look at Dialga and Dialga Origin. Because these Pokemon are actually very similar, but they're also very different. So the main thing that separates both of these, let's take a look at their base stats. So base Dialga has 100, 120. It's wasting a lot of points in attack, honestly. Very like OG, stat spread. But like 150 base special attack, same 90. It's very similar to a Kyogre. It's like a bulky Trick Room Kyogre, right? And if we take a look at Dialga Origin, it has a little bit less attack, right? And it has a little bit more Spadef. But it also gets to hold the Adamant Crystal. It has to hold this move. This item can't be knocked off, and it's going to give you a 1.2 boost to all of your Dragon and Steel type moves, so all of your stab-based moves. I think it's actually really good. I found when I was playing a lot of Dialga Origin, I was able to not put like that many points in special attack. Sometimes just 76 with Nature, combining the fact that we get a 10% boost to our highest stat. You actually hit pretty hard, and you're able to just OHKO things if you're hitting them for super effective. Like you can just OHKO a Cali Eye with like a Flash Cannon, or just OHKO like a Koraidon with like Dragon Pulse. Even with like very limited investment, you can still just OHKO some bulky mons in some situations. That being said, I think regular Dialga being able to hold like something like a Mental Herb, if I can type, Lemao, Mental Herb, right? To be able, so you can go for your Trick Room still. Sometimes you can see them hold like citrus berries. I think Lefties is good if you have Protect. My favorite set on this guy, other than Assault Vest, which I think is a very, very good set too. I think AV, bulky other restricteds are going to rise eventually. Right now we're seeing a lot of people just use Shadow Rider next to like another restricted and just roll people over with Astrals. What people are going to realize is you can just slap like an AV on your Ogre, on your Reshiram, on your Dialga, and use that to just 1v1 the Shadow Rider easy peasy, and have your other restricted deal with like the Shadow Rider's teammate. So I really like Dialga in some of these situations, but my favorite set for Dialga is probably Psy-Seeds or some sort of like other seeds. Grassy Seeds is good. Misty Seeds is a little bit dicey because it's going to be having a fairy terrain, which would cut your dragon moves, but like all the seeds, electric seeds, just seeds in general, so you can actually weave in a bunch of other stuff with it. I think we're eventually going to start seeing more people utilize like, how cool is this? So you can go like Electric Seed here, pair it next to Miraidon and go like Telepathy, and then go like Discharge Miraidon next to like Seeds Dialga. That's like so sick. I think the fact that we get Telepathy and Pressure on this mon is actually also very nice. Pressure is a very underrated ability. Both forms get it, this base form Dialga and its origin form. And Pressure being able to like, if you have access to Protect, every single time they make contact with you, they're going to waste the PP. And if we take a look at like a lot of the popular mons in this format, the two most popular are both the Riders. Astral Barrage and Glacial Lance both only have 8 power points, right? They're going to be wasting a ton of their resources going into your Pressure mon every single turn. So you pop the Protect, waste 2 PP, soak some damage, waste 2, Protect, do it again, and then they only get 1 more. Even if they KO you, now they can't break the rest of your team, and now not only can they not break the rest of their team, they're a liability because they are built so predominantly around those like 1 AoE moves. You don't even need like Wide Guard. You can sometimes just check some of these people with like a good pressure user and good defensive typing. That being said, I think I really like Dialga, and it's hard to say which one of these is actually better in the current format. I've had more success so far with Origin, but like once the meta fine-tunes, and we're going to find ways that like Mental Herb Dialga could sneak in, Citrus Berry, more of those seeds play, I think that both can be good. I would put them both in the C tier. They're not as good as Ray. One good thing about Dialga, we're also just going to mention the elephant in the room. It gets Trick Room, right? That's the thing. That's the thing Dialga does. This is like a different way to play Ice Rider, man. If you're someone that's playing like Ice Rider and you're like, man, I hate using Ice Rider like and just getting beat by Wide Guard. Try Dialga, right? It's the same thing. It's enabling the same mons, but it's a single target attacker as opposed to a AoE attacker. They have roughly the same ideas. Like they have the same base HP. They have really, really chonky defenses, tons of offensive stats. Dialga even gets a little steroid if you're using the Origin into its into its like flash cannons and stuff like that. So it's very niche, but I still think it's good. That being said, I would probably put like this is where I'm looking right now. It's hard to say if I want to keep it like that. There are situations where like Dialga could creep up into B if we start to see too much Kyogre play or too much Shadow Rider play. But one of the main reasons why Dialga, you heard me say so many good things about it. You're like, why is it in B tier? It's because Zenta is like everywhere right now and Koraidon is like everywhere right now. And having to Terra is very, very bad. Like I think one of the better Terras for Dialga is something like Bug, which is a very niche type because it makes you lose your weakness to both ground and fighting. And like when you're bug tearing, you're restricted, you're gaining so many more, you're gaining weaknesses to rocks, fire, like flying, right? There's so many different lines that game goes down. And I think that it's much better in close sheet. But that being said, Dialga has options. It's very chunky. And I just think that like it not having access to like Dynamax anymore makes it a lot harder to use. So I would put it in C tier for now. Let's take a look at Palkia and Origin Palkia. They're actually like really, really different. Dialga is like basically the same. You're playing like, do I have an item that's I don't want knocked off, or do like, you know, I have an item that like I want to use like a mental or something. Palkia is like really different. It's just a different mon in general than Dialga. So if we plug in like Palkia here, you can see that unlike Dialga, it has a 100 base speed, which is actually going to make it faster than a lot of the other restricteds. I think it's so weird that they did that, but I'm very happy that they did because Palkia's a cool mon. And Palkia Origin, unlike Dialga Origin that just gets a little bit bulkier, Palkia Origin just gets faster, right? 120. So this is actually like a fast mon. I think as the meta develops, we're going to see more people cutting speed from like the Koraidons and other mons that are all in that 135 base speed tier area, like Fluttermanes, Koraidons, all those guys. And they might realize that all they really have to outspeed is stuff like Whimsicott and Tornaduses. They might cut a lot of that speed. It might make a slot in some situation where a full speed like Palkia could actually have a lot of value. Like Palkia outspeeds Roaring Moon. I know Roaring Moons are usually built with like booster energy, but in a certain situation where the booster can't activate or something, maybe like if a Weezing comes in, you can just check the Roaring Moon right off the rip. And I think that's actually really cool that Palkia can do that. That being said, this Palkias tend to be built more like the pressure telepathy one, similar to Dialga. Yes, they have 100 base speed, but like they're still kind of trick room setters. The main thing that makes Palkia not too great is the fact that it doesn't get like Scald. If you want to use a water attack, there's not that many options. You basically have Surf or Hydro Pump. So it's a bit more of a slot machine, kind of like Groudon. It also gets access to its signature move, which is Spatial Rend. High crit ratio, 95% accuracy. I always seem to miss this move, but it's still a good one. That being said, I think Palkia is cool. I like building it with like telepathy next to like Ursaluna teams, big EQ energy. I think this next to Calyrex Ice is historically like a pretty good core. Two different Trick Room setters with two completely different defensive typings that can pivot in for each other. If you're afraid of like fire attacks on your Calyrex, you can pivot in and fourth resist it with Palkia. If you're afraid of fairy attacks on your Palkia, well, Calyrex doesn't really care about most fairy users. You know how goes it. So I think these are two really good mons. I like this one more, I think, in this format, just because like the Lustrous Globe gives you like damage steroids on your Spatial Rend, on your Hydro Pump. And I really like cores that are built around like Palkia with like Pelipper for like Tailwind, Wyguard, Rain, giving a little bit of a steroid. You can still run it with like the telepathy and maybe surround it with like a Landorus and stuff like that. I think this is like such a cool core with like Earthquake, Intimidates. There's a lot of damage mitigation. It's a cool way to play anti-meta stuff. And I like Palkia Origin. That being said, regular Palkia is better. You get an item. It can be a side. You can do all that stuff I just mentioned with Dialga, with like Psy Seeds and all the different seeds play, or like Leftovers and Citrus. With regular Palkia, even Leftovers Palkia is good. And Palkia gets access to like Earth Power, Flamethrower, Fire Blast, a bunch of other really cool moves. Thunder makes it a good check for Ogre. That being said, I think Palkia is like B tier. I think Palkia is B tier. I think Origin Palkia is still under Ray. This is how I'd put it. I like using Origin Palkia more, but like, I don't know if you guys have seen any of the games that I've played using Palkia and like Lunala. Palkia is one of those mons that people just don't have the calcs for. It can just eat Astrals. It can eat a bot. It can eat any attack like once. And so if you're making a team that like, I have to get up Trick Room or I have to KO this, Palkia is going to be one of those mons that can get that done for you. And I think people are going to be looking at my list and they're like, whoa, Palkia better than Ray, that's crazy. But like, we're just putting it in the B tier. It's probably not going to be at the top of the B tier. But I think it's better than just being like C tier, like not great. Palkia has historically been one of like the best restricteds in the game, and you always see an upsurge in Palkia every single time there's like a double restricted format. So I would put Palkia in the B tier, and we're gonna move on to the next one, which is actually my favorite restricted. I've been loving Altered Form Giratina, has a lot of bulk, and a defensive Terra type makes a good wall. Yeah, I think that when we talk about Giratina, which is coming up next, there's a lot of good things to say about Giratina. Giratina, similar to Groudon, is one of the hugest beneficiaries of what Terra does. Because Giratina has, you know, massive weaknesses to like Ghost, Dark, Fairy, and that used to be what checked it in the past. Like, it had weaknesses to common mons, like Urshifu just says no, like Urshi Dark says you're done. Now the Giratina can like flip on a Terra and use its chonk for good. Like, there's things that Giratina can do. But let's talk about Reshiram first, because that's the next one on our list. So Reshiram and Zekrom are the two restricteds from Gen 5. And I like Reshiram. Turbo Blaze is a good ability. If we're looking at things that Reshiram can contribute to the meta, it breaks sturdy Ogerpon cornerstones, it breaks like the Shadow Shields or the multi-scales and all those things. And if you have the right teammate for Reshiram, which is hard to find because it's gonna basically leave your teammate to do a lot of the work. If you have like a Koraidon or a Groudon and you want to come with this Reshiram and click like Overheat or Blue Flare, you can just blow up something on turn 1, and that kind of breaks some people's flowcharts. Like, a lot of people, they're probably just gonna be leading like Kali-I, Ogerpon, Redirect, TR, easy peasy. Reshiram says, your sturdy user's gone. I just taunted your Kali-I. Even if you read me and went for like a Lance, I didn't lose both my mons because my mons are good. And now your redirection's gone, and I'm just going to blow you up now, right? So that's how that works. I think Reshiram is similar to Ray, and then it's like a bit of a race to the finish mon. A lot of people I've seen play this guy are using it with specs right now, and I'm not really that big of a fan of specs. My favorite set on it is actually Eject Pack. And what I like about this is you can go things like Overheat and Draco Beam. It's one of the only mons that can really do this play, and you play it kind of like how people played Torkoal back in like previous formats. You would just blow something up and get a free pivot into your other mon. So if you have this like Reshiram next to like a Lunala or something, you can go like big TR with the Lunala, and they can't really double up the Lunala and respect the Reshiram. And if you have a Reshiram have the right speed tier, Reshiram can like blow up one of their mons, stop them from blowing up your Lunala, get up your Trick Room, and then bring in like an Ursaluna, right? Or like a Torkoal or something like that. But like Ursaluna would be able to like get its Flame Orb active at the end of that turn to activate its Guts, and you're just in like such a cool spot. I think it's one cool way to play Reshiram. It also gets access to like Fire Spin, bunch of other like really unique tech moves. It gets Tailwind, so it's not like a terrible secondary Tailwind option for manual Tailwind. So I do like Reshiram, and also Fire Dragon typing is just very unique. We were talking about stuff that's good into some of the best mons in the game. So like, if we take a look at like what we think the best cores are right now, that's basically going to be stuff like Shadow Rider. So like Shadow Rider Zenta is really, really popular, right? And then so is like Calyrex, Ice, and Miraidon. Reshiram's like neutral into all those. Like, it's the only restricted that's like not taking anything really super effective from any of those stabs, which like, that has to count for something. Like, AV Reshiram will have its time in the sun. So that being said, where would I put Reshiram? I had a lot of good things to say about it. It's my favorite. I think if you're going to actively utilize Reshiram, it's similar to Groudon in that, like, if it goes under, like, 70%, it's within range of getting KO'd by, like, random Flutters or Pows or, like, other non-restricted mons, which is going to make it kind of hard to use. It's going to make it kind of hard to use. That being said, I don't think it's, like, B tier. It might be C tier. It's definitely not D tier. I think it's like better than some of these. I would put it right here. And I think I'm being generous in putting it right here. I don't think it's as good as Ray. I think Ray provides the unlockability for more teams than Reshiram does. And I feel like even if you had like a tech Reshiram set with like that eject pack thing or like a tailwind, or you were able to like blow up their redirector or something through a sturdy, that's only gonna work once. And then like once the cat's out of the bag with your Reshiram, you're basically playing a 1v2 with your other restricted, trying to like beat them for the rest of the set, which is, it's hard. But I think that like Reshiram has value. I think like an AV Reshiram could be good at some point in the meta. And I think it's better than like the origin forms of like Palkia. I think that like Reshiram just has like really, really good typing. And it's good enough to be like right in the middle of the pack, right in like the middle of C tier, right in the middle of the meta. So let's take a look at Giratina Origin and Giratina Altered. Those are two pretty cool mons, right? I think they're both pretty cool. They both have the base 90 speed. So let's take a look at Giratina. So you can see both their speeds here. They're both 90 speed. Giratina Altered has telepathy. The other one just has levitate, right? And so they have 150 base HP, which is massive. The origin form has 20 more base attack and special attack, whereas the altered form has 20 more base defense and special defense. And so the way that we want to play this is like if you're using the base form Giratina, you're probably going to be using more of a pressure ability, unless you wanted to like utilize it with like discharge or some like what is it, like lava plume strat where you're like hitting yourself, boom burst, all those sort of things. You could use telepathy. I've used telepathy on this before, but I think pressure is probably better with like lefties. And if you're utilizing origin, I think origin's probably better in this format, just my opinion, because it has a decent matchup into Kali-I. It's a Terra Hog. If you like Fire or Steel Terra, they can't actively hit you very well with the Kali-I because your Levitate lets you block the high horsepower, and then you would resist the like the Glacial Lance with like a fire typing. Now the thing that holds Giratina back from being good is it doesn't get access to any recovery moves. It doesn't get Roost or Recover. It doesn't get Dragon Dance. The only set of moves this guy really gets is like Calm Mind. It gets access to a bunch of really cool moves like Poltergeist and other like aggressive like physical options like Shadow Sneak and things like that, but it doesn't really get like, I don't think it gets like Tailwind either. It gets like Icy Wind. It doesn't even get like Taunt. So like Giratina is one of those really reactive mons. Yeah, and you can't hold lefties and be origin form. Yeah, you have to hold the Grisius core and be in this one of the values of that though is it can't be knocked off, so you don't take the double damage from knockoff. Yeah, Curse is usable on this thing. I think Curse is very viable. I tend to rate Giratina a little bit higher than some other people do because I've spent a lot more time utilizing it. People are always asking me, what can you disguise Zoroark is in these formats? Giratina is one of the best ones because it doesn't have any of its abilities activate other than the pressure. So if you can use Telepathy here or the Levitate here and it won't activate upon being sent out, so it's a good Zoroark disguise. That being said, like let's think about what Giratina is even good against. Giratina is like great into both Kyogre and Groudon, which like aren't SS tier anymore, so Giratina's taken a hit there. A lot of the mons that have come out since then are also really good into Giratina. Like Urshifu Dark is just so good into it. Shempao, great. Both of Shempao stabs are great into Giratina. Things like Koraidon, Miraidon, and all the Paradox Pokemon that come with them are just really good into Giratina. Giratina's kind of neutral into some of these, but all these dragon things can just OHKO you back, and you don't do like super effective damage back to them in every single situation. Like Dialga, you kind of don't do that much into. You see how like Giratina's kind of fighting an uphill battle against a lot of the other restricteds, and where it excels is its ability to wall some non-restricteds. If your opponent's playing like Stall, probably one of the worst things they're going to want to fight against is a Giratina. That being said, you will like be able to outvalue people. If you want to run like a lefties Giratina with like a defensive Terra, and you're rocking pressure on the altered form, I think you're going to be able to surprisingly outvalue a lot of stuff. It's great into Terapagos because you're going to be able to force them into that Stellar Terra to even hit you for neutral, right? And then you can just go protect, heal, protect, heal with like another teammate that has like a healing move, and you just outvalue all of their Starstormers and they lose. I think it's a really good play. That being said, where would I put it? I don't think that they're D tier. And I also think Giratina Origin is like better than people give it credit for. That being said, someone has to end up in the D tier, don't they? That's life. And I can it's so hard, right? I feel like Giratina, yeah, it's in the D tier. Sorry, I gotta do it. I can't just put every mon in the C tier. Giratina is objectively worse than things like Dialga because it doesn't get access to Trick Room. Dialga getting access to very good defensive typing in general, and Trick Room puts it just in a tier above Giratina. Dialga also has like better offensive, so actually once you do your speed control, you do your thing. Giratina leaves its teammate high and dry in a wide variety of situations, and it asks for a lot of permission to do the moves that it wants. It doesn't get Swords Dance, it doesn't get Dragon Dance, it kind of just sits around. And it also lost Double Team in this gen as opposed to previous gens as well. So I feel like Giratina's lost a lot of what really makes it work. That being said, Giratina is viable on the right stuff. If you have a really good matchup into some things, Giratina can be the last piece that could solve your team, but it's going to be hard to make it work. Eternatus. Is it Eternatus or Eternatus? Now, I think Eternatus does one thing better than every single other mon on this list. Maybe Ho-Oh might do it better, but I think it is the best pressure mon. We're talking about the value that Giratina brings, and I think as far as all these pressure mons go, Eternatus is the best. It has the second highest HP behind Giratina. It has decent defenses and 95 on both, respectable special attack and speed, and it's important to have a high base speed on your pressure mons so you can use your recovery options without getting taunted, right? So you can play around taunt. Like Eternatus, uninvested, outspeed Shadow Rider with a +1. So if you Icy Wind them or something, or Bleak Wind, you're still you're still faster. But I think like this thing with like a Black Sludge or like a Lefties, this is the ultimate pressure mon because it gets Protect, right? They all do. And it gets a recovery move. None of the other pressure mons get like recovery options. So this is the one that can just sit there and be like, okay, you're going to Glacial Lance? Like, I'll just flip on a Terra and block it. Oh, Astral? That's going to do 20%. Like, we're good. You can put it behind screens. There are a few players that are really, really good at playing Eternatus that, like, always seem to make it into, like, the day 2 or, like, on the cusp of day 2. And that's just because this mon is, like, very efficient at feasting on people that are trying to cruise control for cool with choice items. I think it's a very, very solid mon. It gets access if you also want to be being played an exact opposite way with like Meteor Beam, Power Gem, right? It gets access to Dynamax Cannon, which is still like a really good move in this format. It's a 100 base power, like, is it Dynamax Cannon right here? 100 base power, like just standard, like good move. It gets Sludge Bomb that it stabs. It's the only poison type mon on this list, so it's like the strongest Sludge Bomb in the game. It gets Fire Spin, it gets Cosmic Power. Very, very underrated mon. Very underrated mon. I like Eternatus a lot. It's one of those things that you compare with like Chi-Yu or Flutter or like anything, and they're just like, oh, I don't have a match for that. Like that. Now, I will say there are problems with it too. Kali Eye is going to give it a lot of problems. Expanding Force Shadow Rider is going to give it a lot of problems. Sometimes Lunala can give it a lot of problems. Groudon's great into it, but it's good into things like Zacian in some situations. It's great into things like Kyogre. It's really, really good into Ogre. I think it's a very, very solid mon. And I could talk about it for a lot longer, but I think it's definitely above Palkia in the B tier. Definitely like a solid B tier mon. If you're looking for like weird anti-meta mons to kind of mess with, you can use this thing. My favorite set for it's Choice Scarf. Being able to like just outspeed like Shadow Riders and just come in and like clean up in the late game. Very, very cool mon. But that being said, the pressure ability, it's the best pressure user in the game if you want to play that bulky, slow game with like screens. Very, very underrated mon. So think about giving this guy a shot in your own games. You're going to be really surprised by how effective this stat spread is. You don't really need that much speed to outspeed things. You don't need like any HP investment. You can get away with going heavy special attack investment and go for some really unique stab options. You being like the Meteor Beam to check in Sins, stab Sludge Bomb, stab Dynamax Cannon. It gets Flamethrower and other stuff like that too. Very, very underrated mon. I think it's very, very cool. This is where I think everyone will start to disagree with my tier list, because I feel like up until now we've had a really good tier list where we haven't had anything in the S tier, and we've explained why some of these things are undertuned compared to some of their newer options, which these are mostly in like order of release. So that's why, you know, I moved Mewtwo around because I wanted to wait for people to leave my tier list. But I think Mewtwo is a good Pokemon. I do think Mewtwo is a good Pokemon. Every single time I make Mewtwo videos, they always do well. We always find new ways to cook with this Pokemon, and that's because, you want the answer? You want the answer? People don't have Mewtwo calcs. 90% of the player base has not played against a good Mewtwo player. That's just how it works. And so when the Mewtwo lives on a sliver, they're like, oh, never lucky. And it's like, actually, you just don't have experience in this matchup. Now, if you're going to be playing against good people and top-cutting regionals and doing a bunch of other stuff like that, yeah, Mewtwo, it might not be as good, but against the vast majority of players, you're going to be able to steal a lot of wins with Mewtwo. Mewtwo is crafty, and there's a lot of cool things that Mewtwo can do that no other mon really can do. So let's take a look at Mewtwo and compare it to some of the other Psychic mons in these formats. Now, Mewtwo is a perfect example of power creep. It was the first real restricted, and if you compare Mewtwo to something like Eternatus, which we're not even going to be comparing it to like Shadow Rider yet, which is such a check. Look at this. 130 turns into 130, but then like 145, Mewtwo had 154, but Eternatus has like more bulk, and then like Eternatus has like 40 more base HP, right? Let's compare it to Shadow Rider, a more optimized version of Mewtwo. Mewtwo's 130 on the speed, turns into a 150, and then Shadow Rider gets more Spadef, a little bit less defense, freaking like 11 more base special attack and a little bit less HP, and then Shadow Rider has like Astral Barrage. Mewtwo doesn't have any of that. And the reason why these two are actually comparable, right, is because as one is like a fusion of Unnerve and like Grim and Beast Boost, basically. And Mewtwo just has Pressure or Unnerve. And both are viable. I think Pressure is better in these formats, and you got to use that to your advantage. We already went and talked a lot about the value of like, you know, we were talking about Eternatus having like protect, recover, pressure. Mewtwo can do that same thing if you put it behind screens. We've done that. We've shown that off in videos. It's a really cool mon. That being said, what does Mewtwo really get? What's its signature move? That's going to be Psystrike here, which is actually really, really cool. It's a base 100, and it deals damage on the defense. It's like a super Psyshock. So you can pair this thing with stuff like Shenpao and actually like tear through stuff. It's one of my favorite ways to do it. These two actually kind of just slap next to each other. I think it's really, really cool. I think Mewtwo also gets access to a bunch of other like tech moves that you would not expect. Doesn't mean that it's cheese, but like when you look at the Mewtwo, you're like, oh, that wasn't on the bingo card. Like Ice Terra Blizzard Mewtwo in Snow. That's not something. It did keep Hurricane, yeah. It used to get Max Airstream, which means it was better in Sword and Shield, but it gets access to like Blizzard. We built a physical Mewtwo with Bulk Up. It gets Bulldoze. Scarf Mewtwo is personally my favorite way to play it. You can put Scarf Bulldoze next to like a Weakness Policy Solgaleo, break both their sashes, speed drop both their mons, and have the Solgaleo just clean sweep them into a million pieces. That's something that Mewtwo can do that not a lot of other mons can. It gets access to like Protect, Calm Mind, which is really good if you want to pair it with like the recover options with the pressure. It gets access to Dark Pulse, Disable, Earth Power, Energy Ball, obviously Expanding Force, Fire Coverage from Fire Blast, Flamethrower. It gets Fling, Focus Blast, Helping Hand, Hurricane, Ice Beam, Icy Wind, Knockoff, Life Dew. This is not stuff that a lot of things get, right? Has a good move pool. Thank you so much for the sub. I appreciate you talking about Mewtwo with me. Nasty Plot, Power Gem. Like we aren't really like hard checked for coverage. We can look at any mon in the meta and be like, I can hit that for super effective. And you honestly can't tell me that a Pokemon that can hit anything for super effective with like a 154 base special attack is not usable. You can't. It's just, it's not great, but it's definitely usable, right? So like we're still going down against Psyshock, Recover, Dual Screens, Shadow Ball, like Taunt. We're still going against Trick, Weather Ball, Wisp. Like, I implore you to try and use this thing. It gets imprisoned, so like all those moves that we just listed, you can also just imprison all those same moves on your opponent. That makes Mewtwo a little bit better in close sheet than open sheet, I would agree. But if you want it does get Trick Room. Yep, you can run Imprison Trick Room Mewtwo. Yep. So I think Mewtwo is a usable mon. It's obviously been power crept to heck, but no one really knows how to like play against Mewtwo anymore. My favorite set, like I said, is Scarf. And I think it's just a really, really fun mon. I would put Mewtwo in the B tier because it does a little bit of everything. We were talking about Groudon being like the Mario of the series, being like neutral in like every single kind of situation, but like Mewtwo is definitely like Mario. It's a little bit fast and it's a little bit strong and it has like a little bit of a lot of coverage and it's definitely near the bottom of the B tier, but like look at how we've been organizing the tiers, right? I'm not saying Mewtwo's better than Shadow Rider or Calyrex or Zacian. I'm saying that Mewtwo has better coverage and a better speed tier than something like Reshiram with more support moves. I'm saying Mewtwo is potentially better than Rayquaza because if you're using Rayquaza, you are playing a race to the finish type team, and I think Mewtwo lends itself to having a little bit wider move pool so you could facilitate a wider way of play. You can play Mewtwo on aggressive Tailwind teams. You can play Mewtwo on Trick Room teams. Versus Ray, you got to play Ray like herp derping around, right? So I think Mewtwo is definitely like a B tier mon. It's not unusable. Mewtwo gets massively power crept by things like Miraidon, both of the Riders, and other stuff like that. But if you have the right matchup and the right restricted, Mewtwo can still be definitely usable, I think. So Mewtwo's in the B tier. Let's take a look at Ho-Oh. Does Mewtwo get Flamethrower or Mystical Fire? It gets Flamethrower and Fire Blast. You actually Fire Blast Mewtwo with like Stellar Terra actually kills a lot of things that you wouldn't expect. So it's a good mon. Let's take a look at Ho-Oh. I think Ho-Oh is an underrated mon too. I think Ho-Oh is one of those mons that greatly benefits from being a double restricted. It gets access to Pressure, which it makes it, if you wanted to play it with Pressure, you could. And there are some situations in which you're not pivoting as much where you would play Pressure with like Recover just like Eternatus because it has an amazing stat line, right? It has 106 HP, 90, 154. This thing historically has been a great mon to wall Shadow Riders. But Regenerator is what people normally play this for. When this thing finally got Regenerator, this mon like turned into like a next level stall mon. What's cool about Ho-Oh is it gets Sacred Fire. Can you even use Electricity Ho-Oh? You could if you were playing the Regenerator or the Pressure one. But Sacred Fire is what this guy gets. 50% chance to burn, 95% accuracy. People tend to play this guy with like Sacred Fire, Brave Bird. Sometimes they put like what is it, the Clear Amulet, so you can't get intimidated by Sin, and then they just go like Protect. Sometimes you see Tailwind in this slot. Yo, thank you. Is that another sub? Yo, appreciate it. Appreciate the subs, yo. We're doing our absolute best out here, trying to give you guys the most amount of info you can. Protect or Recover are both good here. Ho is a really good mon. It has the same 90 base speed that all the other ones do, which means you don't really need to be this fast on it. Great attack stat, massive spadef. What I've actually seen in a lot of tours is people use like a really aggressive restricted, like a Terapagos or a Shadow Rider, or even Miraidon. I've seen a lot of Miraidon because the things that beat Miraidon are like ice attacks and ground attacks, so it was a good pivot for that. And I think Ho is one of those mons that requires a lot of very specific team building to check. Ho Terapagos just won a 79-person tour at Limitless. Well, there you go, right? So I think Ho-Oh is good. I definitely think Ho-Oh is good, but I think Ho-Oh does struggle in the fact that it has to ask for a lot of permission to do whatever it's going to do. It's very reactive. So Ho-Oh is susceptible to intimidate and fake out cycling. You could say, well, you have Clear Amulet. Dude, it's not intimidated. Well, they're just going to knock off you with the Insin, and the Ho-Oh is not putting enough pressure on the board to stop the Insin from being afraid of you. You can just protect with your teammate and just knock off the Ho-Oh. And if, like, you know, you could say, well, what if my teammate kills the Insim? Well, like, what if their teammate kills your teammate? Because your Ho-Oh's not helping it, and you still get knocked off on your Ho-Oh, you still lose, right? So, in theory, Ho-Oh has all the tools to be, like, really, really good, but it's a very high skill ceiling mon. It's one of those mons that if you weave in the regenerators and pair it with the right mons, like Amoonguss with a regenerator, people have historically used it with Toxapex in the past. Amoonguss, like I said, Amoonguss, Raging Bolt. Those are very, very good things to pair it with. Rillaboom is good if you're going to terrestrialize your Ho-Oh so it can gain access to the grassy terrain healing. I think it's a really good mon. I would put it in the B tier. It's definitely not an A tier. I think it's better than Eternatus, though. I do. I think it's better than Eternatus. I think Ho-Oh is one of those mons that I wouldn't be surprised if there's like one regional near like the end of the season where Ho-Oh like creeps up and it just being like, yeah, I'm up here now for like one event. Just because like it's one of those things that like if you know enough about the meta and you have such a good understanding of what moves your opponents need to do to use into you, Ho-Oh can come in and just like slow the game down to a snail's pace. You kind of play it like a Wo-Chien. And like you see everything that's happening and you just punish correctly. I think Ho-Oh is really, really cool in that situation. And I'm building a team right now where I'm going to be building like Ho-Oh Ice Rider. I think there's actually a lot to that core right now. So that's something that I'm working on in my own games. I think Ho-Oh is definitely like a good mon. And yeah, I think it's definitely viable. I think the fact that you also can play like really, really aggressive Ho-Oh with like Covert Cloak and Tailwind as well makes it one of the best like manual Tailwind setters that aren't boosted by Prankster. So I think Ho-Oh has a lot going for it. You say the team that Ho-Oh used with Toxapex is what won that tournament. You know, I created that. I want everyone to know. You know, the person who created like Ho-Oh Toxapex thing that everyone knows, that's me. I made that. You know, other people get credit. I made it. That's my idea. I did it first. I made the like. Yeah, Ho-Oh's good into like Groudon. It's good into Zacian and Zamazenta. Yeah, straight up, it is my team. I made it, and then I gave it to a buddy of mine who got top 16 at, was it Knoxville Regionals? But I made the team. That's one of my claims to fame. I created it. I saw the value when there was none, you know? So, take that one all the way to the bank. So, let's talk about both the Kyurem forms. I think these guys get a bad rap, and I think they're both much better than people give them credit for. And I think they're better in double restricted than they are in single restricted. Because in a single restricted, Kyurem just loses to Urshifu, right? Like, let's be real, Urshifu kind of checks both these. But in a double restricted, you can have like something like an S tier restricted that just pins their Ursh like out of the game. They don't get to play. You can move in to protect, do a bunch of other stuff, and then have like your Kyurem actually get some value. So let's take a look at Kyurem here. So Kyurem, they both have 95 base speed as opposed to 90. So they're actually great at feasting on like those Groudons and Kyogres. Both the Kyurem forms are going to be really good into both Groudon and Kyogre because they have that ice typing or like electric or something like that that we can just come in and like fat like wall and or check Groudon and Kyogre. So historically they were better back when those were the best ones, but I still think they're viable today. If you take a look at these guys, actually, if you were to sort things by like base stats, they're the strongest Pokemon in the game. They're tied with like Zacians and Zentas for the Pokemon with the most base stats in the game, right? I'm going to read this comment. I've been enjoying Ho-Oh Koraidon as a duo. Terra Fire, Sacred Fire, and the Sun is so good, just blasting anything that survives a hit from pretty much anything. in the meta except Urshifu. Yeah, I think that it's good. Yo, is that a sub gift? Yo, thank you so much. I gotta update the sub count. But thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. We're doing our absolute best to give you guys all of the info that you could possibly need. And I think we're already at 4. But thank you so much for the sub. I appreciate it. Hopefully you're having a great day so far. Hopefully the puppy's doing well. Yeah, I think Kyurem is very viable. Both Kyurems are. So we got Kyurem right here, Kyurem White and Kyurem Black. And the difference between Kyurem White and Kyurem Black is obviously Kyurem Black is going to be 170 attack. It's the strongest attack in the game, I think. Zacian stronger after the Intrepid Sword boost, but same idea. And Kyurem White is 170. It's the strongest special attacker in the game, I think. Like, let me just find out, right? Yeah, nothing stronger than Kyurem Black. And yeah, here we go. Perfect. Yeah, we got the man. These guys are so strong. But that being said, I think their respective moves are going to be Fusion Flare for Kyurem White, which it does not stab. And Kyurem Black gets Fusion Bolt, which it does not stab. Bam. Fusion Bolt, which is a physical attack. And they can also combine and do their other stuff. Like, I built a team the other day where I used, like, Zekrom next to Kyurem White, and I made the Fusion Bolt, Fusion Flare combo. And so I think they're usable, but they don't get access to, like, that many support moves. They're very similar to, like, Ho-Oh and a lot of these other kind of restricteds, where very similar to, like, Reshiram and, like, Zekrom and Dialga, where they kind of just ask for permission to do a lot of stuff. I'm team building for new regional. May I ask your thoughts on a question I'm having? If you ask it, I can do my best to answer, but we are doing the team list we are doing the tier list right now. I'm not going to do like a full team building thing. Yeah, I think though that they're viable, but they command your Terra, right? That's the thing. I think that like both of them are viable. Let's actually talk about sets that both these guys run. Commonly, this guy is built with an Assault Vest, right? And you can put it on a Sun team. You can put it on a rain or a Snow team. They come with like Fusion Flare. They get access to the big Freeze Dry here, and then you get access to like Draco Meteor. Sometimes they run like Earth Power, right? Very, very standard. The fact these guys are this fast, you only really need like this much speed to make them work. And then they have like, look, that's a great stat line. 125 base HP, 9100. The stat lines on these guys are amazing. It's the defensive typing that really pulls them down. They have weaknesses to fighting. They have weaknesses to rock. They have weaknesses to fairy, dragon, a bunch of other stuff like that. They're the best way to explain them is they're honest. They're honest characters. They have major things where they're good at and then major flaws. If we take a look at Kyurem Black, I think Kyurem Black is really, really cool. My favorite set for this guy's Loaded Dice because you can. It's benefited from the buffs over the years. They actually, before this gen, they didn't get Dragon Dance, so like Dragon Dance is cool. It gets Scale Shot. Now the problem is like, why would you run this over a Zacian? That's the question, right? Because you're also not even using one of your ice attacks. It doesn't get like Icicle Crash. It doesn't get Ice Spinner. This is the set you do, right? One of the Red Guy events getting announced. They aren't on Victory Road. They're announced. There was a Victory Road tour last week. So yeah, I think that this is a cool set, but like honestly, like why would you run this when you could just run an Ice Rider? I think that's another thing. These guys fall prey to like a lot of the same stuff that people are targeting to be Ice Rider. There's no reason to run like either of these guys in a format where like Zacian exists, right? So that being said, I think Kyurem White is better because it's not as susceptible to Intimidate. It's not as susceptible to like redirection. I really think Kyurem Black has come a long way over the years, but I think Kyurem White's a little bit better. Kyurem White's better than Dialga. It is. Sorry. Kyurem White's definitely better than Palkia. It's definitely better than Reshiram, because it's Reshiram without Tailwind, but with other coverage. It's better than Rayquaza. It's better than Mewtwo. It's not better than Palkia. So that means Kyurem White is up here. Now, where is Zekrom? Or where's the Kyurem Black? It's not better than Dialga. It's down here. It might be here, but I think it's down here. The fact that like it's so one-dimensional. I love this Mon. I think it's so cool. Yeah. Right? I think that like it has to be in D tier. It's obviously better than Giratina, right? But I think that it just falls prey. It's susceptible to Intimidate, Speed Control, and has way too many weaknesses. Dragon Ice just makes it really rough. It loses the, like this thing loses the Flutter Mane. Like it has to be in the D tier. Not F tier quality, but like definitely not great. We're going to take a look at Solgaleo now, and I feel like every single time Solgaleo is brought up, people are like, you should just run Zenta, or you could just run Dusk Mane, or you could just run Ice Rider. There's so many different like lines and ways you could go, because if you want an aggressive Solgaleo, that's not a Solgaleo, that's a Zacian. And if you want a defensive Solgaleo, that's not a Solgaleo, that's a Zenta, right? They get a lot of the same cards, a lot of the same moves. They're both steel types, like with Wide Guard. that do a lot of single target damage. So that being said, where does Solgaleo really fit, right? Solgaleo has a lot of things going for it. It has a 97 base speed, which means Solgaleo is the same speed as Urshifu, and it has super effective moves in Urshifu being a Steel Psychic, so against Urshi Water. That being said, this outspeeds Shadow Rider if you can throw an Icy one on him or a Bleak one, or even if you want to use Scarf, that's going to outspeed those Shadow Riders. I think it also gets, since it gets access to Sunsteel Strike here, budget Dusk Mane. I mean, Solgaleo is a good mon. It gets access to Sunsteel Strike, and it gets access to, like, Wide Guard and stuff like that. It got nerfed, losing Superpower. I think it has to run Close Combat now. I think Superpower might have been actually better. It's hard to say. Close Combat's fine. But historically, people used to build it like this. That's what Solgaleo used to look like for a lot of people. Sometimes people ran it with Orb. It also gets access to, like, weird stuff like Flare Blitz. Right? Flame Charge. It gets access to Wild Charge. The coverage is there. This mon has a lot of cool things going for it. 137, 137. That's huge base HP. Decent respective defenses. I like to play this guy with Seeds in a lot of my teams, similar to how I like to play Dialga. Like, imagine if Dialga had Wide Guard and couldn't be intimidated on its, like, main stat. Like, yeah, it's a good mon, right? There's definitely a lot of reasons where you could use Solgaleo. It's very similar to Zenta, right? Now, what sets it apart from Zenta, because you're looking at, like, okay, like, Wide Guard, Steel Coverage, that's like a bad Zenta. This mon gets Morning Sun, so it's not, like, all in on just, like, soaking a little bit of damage. Like, I really, really like this one. I hate running into some of these Pokemon on ladder because they're rare enough that I don't exactly know what they do in any match. Well, that's why we're talking about them today. Yeah, it gets Trick Room too. Yeah, Solgaleo does also get Trick Room. So you can build it on a Trick Room team with, like, Seeds. You can put Cloak on it. There's so many different lines Solgaleo can do. It's kind of like a jack of all trades. It's like a fusion of, like, a bunch of... If you took all the tech that every other restricted gets and gave you a mon that, like, has a good single target nuke without being able to get intimidated, that's Solgaleo. I think there's a lot of cool stuff there. All those Bulldoze techs we were talking about, it's a really good mon. If we were to compare it to Dialga, it's better than Dialga. It's better than this. 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 I think it's better than Palkia. I don't think Solgaleo is better than Eternatus. So Palkia goes in the B tier, and I think it's right in the middle of the B tier. The reason why Palkia isn't better is because it has a low speed tier when compared to, like, both the riders. Like Shadow Rider, Miraidon. Koraidon's existence just kind of makes this mon a lot harder to use. That being said, Solgaleo can be a little bit of a Terra Hog in some situations, and I think it's cool. I think it's a really, really good mon. I tend to like more of the passive, like, recovery Solgaleo sets a little bit more. I think it also gets, correct me if I'm wrong, it might get Snarl. It does. Yeah, see, like, Solgaleo gets a lot of really cool stuff, right? We're not expecting it to be so high. Yeah, the thing is, like, so just play some games with it. AV Solgaleo is good. Seeds Solgaleo is good. There's a lot, like, so... If the meta becomes something that Miraidon and if everyone's getting all right, I'm ranking it pretty high. But if the meta, if everyone uses Ice Rider Miraidon, Solgaleo is the mon for you. You have the Wide Guard. You have the check into the Ice Rider. Solgaleo, like, Ground Terra EQ as well. Like, you just pop that Miraidon right in the face. Like, really, really cool mon. Please use some Solgaleo. You can't intimidate it either, so it's not going to be reliant on its item to do its main amount of damage. It means you can go defensive items like Cloaks, like, you know, like Seeds and other things like that. I think so, and Goggles, right? So you can pin so many different things with Solgaleo. I would definitely recommend trying it out. Very, very cool. The fact that it's fast is good. It outspeeds half this list, so it's a good mon. Lunala. Okay. Lunala, the foil to Solgaleo. Like, Lunala's gonna be... Lunala got all the luck in this trade, right? Lunala got the same, like, 137, 137. It's still wasting that 113 there, but, like... Lunala got Shadow Shield, which is way better than Full Metal Body, which just stops Intimidates. This is basically gonna be like a super multi-scale. And then Lunala gets Moongeist Beam, which is also able to break through abilities and stuff like that. It gets access to buffs from, like, Expanding Force. It gets the same Wide Guard. All the things that, like, Lunala gets that make it really obnoxious and annoying, Solgaleo gets those too, and vice versa, right? It gets access to, like, Blizzards, Calm Minds, D-Gleams, Helping Hand, Where's Its Hands, Ice Beam, Meteor Beam, Power Herb. Like, there's a lot that Lunala has. No one needs to tell you that Lunala is, like, a good mon. Tailwind and Trick Room on Lunala, right? Lunala got the good genes in this one. Let's see what else we got over here. Like, Heat Wave, screens, Phantom Force if you wanted to like pair it with something and like break their stuff. Solar Beam, Tailwind, Teleport, Thunder, Trick Room, Will-O-Wisp. Like there's a lot of cool stuff that Lunala gets. I don't think this is wrong. Lunala's an S tier mon in this format, right? I don't think it's wrong. I think Lunala's our first S tier mon. You can say, Lunala's like great, but like it's nowhere near S. It's A. It's top of A at most. And I think Lunala is S tier. This video is being recorded on April 7th, 2025, and like I've played in like 7 Reg I tours, and I've played in all the other restricted formats where Lunala has been legal. And Lunala is like one of those mons that like it just has a little bit too much tech for this meta, and I feel like it's the reason why Lunala is so good right now, where Lunala like wasn't as good in like Sword and Shield or Ultra Sun and Moon, is because the Miraidon and Koraidon dictate so much of the Reg I meta, and those mons, Lunala is one of the few mons here that didn't get like crept to hell from them. Lunala got to play its own game. The fact that these are 2 single target attackers, and Lunala has an ability that says you cannot single target attack me, that's really good. Lunala is just always going to be trading effectively into these, right? Yeah, Lunala Groudon, that's what I just said, that Lunala Groudon was like, that Lunala was the best partner for it. I just got done using a Lunala Groudon video like an hour before recording this. Lunala also historically has been just like really, really good because you always have to double the Lunala, and it can go for protects, wide guards, has good single target damage, good potential for AoE damage, Calm Mind, lefties, power, meteor beam, stuff like that. Lunala is just cracked. It's basically whenever you're building a team for Reg I, you want to think to yourself like, okay, I want my restricted, and then I want to add my wide guard, right? And so it's like you pick your restricted, and then you pick like Zenta for physical wide guard or Lunala for like special wide guard, and that's how it works. Lunala feels really hard to one-shot without a Ghost or Dark move. And you can't even one-shot it if they make their... If Terra is like one of the biggest boosts to Lunala. Like one of the things that held Lunala back in previous years is like it didn't matter like how bulky the Lunala was. It's like I could still just always check it with Snarl. And now they go like Fairy Terra and you just don't check it anymore, right? So Lunala is like one of the biggest Terra hogs in the game, but like you don't lose anything for going Fairy. Because even if they have a Zacian, that's still a single target mon. Like Behemoth Blade, you can just eat it. You can just... Redirection with Lunala will always give you value. Dusk Mane. Talk about power creeping it down. Dusk Mane. What does Dusk Mane bring to the table? Let's compare Dusk Mane to Solgaleo, right? So comparing Dusk Mane to Solgaleo. Give me one sec. There we go. Comparing Dusk Mane to Solgaleo. There's the 137, 137, 97. Dusk Mane's going to be a lot slower, but that's way bulkier, right? It's not a budget Solgaleo. They're completely different mon. It has the Prism Armor ability, which is going to make you take reduced damage from special or from super effective attacks, which is actually a really big boost in this format because you choose what you're weak against with Terra. Like, if you want to go like Fire Terra Dusk Mane and say like, cool, you can't Wisp me, and I still have my weakness to ground, and I have a weakness to water, but like that's it. Like I can just sit in front of your Astral and laugh. That's ridiculous, right? So it still gets the same Sunsteel Strike, but it gets access to like all the weird tech stuff that you wouldn't see on Solgaleo that you see on Necrozma. It gets access to Dragon Dance. It gets access to like, you can build this guy physical or special. It gets the power of Meteor Beam, Expanding Force kit, Heat Wave, all that good stuff. It gets Knockoff, Moonlight, and Morning Sun, so you can pick. Photon Geyser is another signature move that it gets, which does more damage whether it would do physical or special. So like if you've been intimidated to high hell, Photon Geyser is going to do good damage with like your same 113 base special attack stat. It does lose Wide Guard, but it gets access to Trick Room. It's a good Trick Room on. You know, I was talking about earlier, like if you wanted to play Trick Room with Kali I and you were bored of Kali I, maybe try Dialga. If you still want that physical mon, you might want to try Dusk Mane instead. Dusk Mane is the safest mon at getting up Trick Room on this list. I know it sounds really weird. Yeah, I'm going to have to say that again. And we're going to talk about why you say, you just put Lunala in S tier, and you said it can't be doubled up on, and Lunala is so good. Well, you could double up the Lunala, and it'll die. And it costs your Terra to do that. With Dusk Mane, we have, what is that ability? Prism Armor. Like, we could just set Trick Room. You got to taunt me, bro. Like, and we can go Dark Terra. We can hold the Mental Orb. There's so many different things you can do with Dusk Mane. I really, really like this mon. And Dusk Mane's one of those mons that's just hard to use in a single restricted format because it's probably one of the most reactive. You stick an Intimidate on this thing and it goes from 157 to like absolutely wet noodle fight. It also doesn't have like single target coverage for like ground and stuff like that. So there's a lot of holes in this mon. But I really like it. I think Dusk Mane's one of my favorites. You see me use it a lot. I think it gets a lot of cool tech. Can be built physical or special. Gets Trick Room. Gets healing. Gets Swords Dance. Like you can build it. You can make the Dusk Mane dream work. Let's think about where we want to put it. It's better than these. It's better than Dialga and Palkia. It's better than Reshiram. It's better than Ray. Love your content. Well, thank you so much. It's better than Mewtwo. It might not be better than Kyurem, but I think it is, and I think it's better than Palkia too. And I think Dusk Mane is better than Solgaleo. Solgaleo gets Wide Guard, and other than that, Solgaleo's like a really bad Zacian. I would put Dusk Mane up here. Dusk Mane might not be better than Eternatus. It might be though. I'm gonna put Dusk Mane behind Eternatus. Yeah, that's fine. I think Dusk Mane's better than Solgaleo. It's intimidatable, but like, let's think of a board state where you have, like, Dusk Mane and, like, Lunala, or Dusk Mane and Ice Rider. Yes, those are sharing the same weaknesses. Dusk Mane, Ice Rider have, like, Fire weakness, and Dusk Mane, Lunala have, like, Ghost and Dark weakness. But if you flip the Terra on one, it's they can't check both of those TRs at the same time, right? There's no way. Dusk Mane struggles really hard with Sin. You may think this is really, really high, but I think if, like, you're building a team to, like, hyper check the meta and just flip the game. Like if you're playing like Sunroom, full TR, like Torque will win the game, Dusk Mane's definitely a respectable option for you. And the fact that it gets Trick Room with that damage mitigation, it's a better Trick Room Solgaleo. Yeah. I like Meteor Beam Expanding Force Dusk Mane. That's one of my favorite sets. 113 special attack's not even bad. We're going to take a look at Dawn Wings. Now, Dawn Wings is way different than Lunala and way different from Necrozma, Dusk Mane, all these other things. Dawn Wings is actually like a really, really cool mon. I like Dawn Wings a lot. So Dawn Wings gets the same Prism Armor, and it gets a special attack instead of physical. So it's going to be harder to stop because it's not weak to Intimidate. And Dawn Wings, similar to Dusk Mane, it has like that massive weaknesses. Sorry, similar to Lunala, where it has that 4 times weakness to like Ghost and Dark. But if you tear that away, if you just go like Fairy or like Water here, bro, like, you don't have any weaknesses. And even if they hit you with, like, a Grassy Guard from Marilla, Prism Armor says you don't care. Thunderclap, I don't care, right? I'm not going to die. It gets access to the same sort of stuff like Meteor Beam. It gets access to Expanding Force. It gets the Moongeist Beam from the Lunala aspect of it. 77 base speed means it's slower than Lunala. So if you're going into those Lunala mirrors and you get the Trick Room up, you underspeed them and pin them, right? You have a lot more bulk, right? This is a good mon. This is a good mon, and if you're sleeping on this mon, I feel bad for you, son, because the Necrozma Dawn Wings is coming. That's a +1, right? That's how this works. It's good into Shadow Rider. It's good into Ice Rider. It's Terra Alliant in both, but it's decent in Miraidon. It's great into Koraidon, right? I think this mon's definitely usable. I was making a team with, like, this in T-Tar, and it was just, like, slapping people, and I couldn't believe it. It was so good. That being said, where would I put it? I think it's going to... Now, I have to be realistic and tell you guys some of the bad things about it. It is a Terra Hog, right? If you just sit there, you will die to, like, Shadow Ball. And every Crunch and Shadow Ball and Snarl will just mess you the heck up if you don't flip Terra on this thing. So you can only play it with, like, certain restricteds that aren't as Terra Alliant. But I do think that the fact that it starts out as a Ghost means you're not really weak to Fake It off the rip. And Sin gives this guy a hard time unless you're using the Meteor Beam too. It's definitely, like, B tier-esque. I don't think it's A tier. It's better than Eternatus, but I don't think it's as good as Ho-Oh. That's where I'd put Dawn Wings. This mon has, like, really good stat lines. 700 base stats. Like, it's good. It has the tech. And it gets the same other weird stuff like Dragon Dance and other things like that. It gets Heat Wave, Dazzling Gleam, Screens. I've built this thing with, like, Hyper Voice, Normal Terra before to check Shadow Riders and, like, other stuff. Like, I think there's a lot of cool stuff that this guy gets. So I would definitely put it right there. Yeah, what do you guys think? I don't think that's too high for that mon. I think there's a lot of good stuff that it has going for it. I might need to move some of these mons into the C tier. Mewtwo's still B, I think. That's just how this works. Taking a look at Zekrom, my second favorite restricted. Oh my gosh, why do I like all this stuff that's bad? So, Zekrom, 90 base speed, 150 attack. Terravolt means it has Mold Breaker just like Reshiram and both the Kyurem forms where it ignores those defensive abilities. And this guy gets access to two signature moves being Fusion Bolt and Bolt Strike. 130. Big damage. This guy just loses to Intimidate, though. Loses to Intimidate, loses to Redirection since it's a single target attacker. It loses to Dazzling Gleams, like Flutters tear this guy to pieces. The best thing this guy gets is like Tailwind. If you were to compare this to any other one mon, Dragon Electric used to be like a really good typing, and then they came out with something called Raging Bolt, right? So Raging Bolt has 125 versus Zekrom's 100. Raging Bolt better. Raging Bolt has less attack, but like it has a comparable offensive 137 to Zekrom's 150. 91 Raging Bolt. 120 Zekrom. Zekrom has it more. Zekrom 100 base defense. Raging Bolt 89. Comparable, not the same. 75 versus 90. Comparable, not the same. But like, why would you? But all that's negated by the fact that Raging Bolt gets Thunderclap, right? And it's not weak to Intimidate. And it gets like Snarl. So it's like, I think that like, that's not your man in this format. That's Raging Bolt. If you just like Zekrom and you think Zekrom's cool, you could just use Raging Bolt. And also, Raging Bolt has an ability that could work sometimes if like Sun happens. And then like, it's way better than Zekrom. So, like, this sucks. But, like, bro, I've used a lot of Zekrom. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I had to do it to you, my guy. Zekrom is, like, not usable in this format. I've tried everything. The best thing it can be is a unique Tailwind mon. But the problem with Zekrom is everyone's checking Miraidon. So, like, it's just die. It's just, like, asking to die, right? A Fluttermane says no. Shenpao says no. Every single one of these says, like, no. So, it's like, I'm not even wrong. It's the first bad one. See, the thing with, like, Giratina, why Giratinas aren't at the bottom here, is because, like, yeah, they're weak, but, like, you're not going to one-shot it. This just gets one-shot about, like, everything. Because you have to, the problem with Zekrom is you have to go, like, full offense to make it work. And if you wanted to run, like, an AV Zekrom or like a scale shot loaded ice Zekrom, you could, but then you just lose to like protect baits and fake outs and intimidates, and it's not looking good for our hero. But lost but not forgotten. Let's leave it like that. Zacian and Zenta. Oh man, it's time. So Zacian is, we're going to take a look at the Crown form. We're going to take a look at both of them eventually. But the Crown form has Fairy and Steel. It has to hold the Rusted Sword. It has the Intrepid Sword ability. So it has all these, it has a 150 base attack stat and then gets a +1 attack stat when it comes into battle. And this only happens once per battle. So if you pivot this guy out, bring it back in, it's not going to happen again. That being said, 148 is going to allow you to outspeed things like Flutter, Koraidon, Miraidon, all those other things. The only things that outspeed Zacian are like Shadow Rider or like Electrode, right? But you're gonna be outspeeding it's pretty much the second fastest Pokemon in the format. Big single target damage. Behemoth Blade does no longer deal that double damage to Dynamax mons because they're not in the game, but it's still good. Play Rough's still good. I get access to like Sacred Sword or Close Combat. I think Close Combat's still good because you can still like Oko and Sin. Gets Protect, Sub. Yeah, everyone forgot about Regieleki. You're right. I forgot about Regieleki. That's fine. Regieleki exists. You guys are right. But it's not that important. Really helps to hear these explanations. I wouldn't really know how to compare all these restricted to others. Well, I'm doing my best to help. Yeah, I should have mentioned Regieleki, but Zacian gets like access to like Sub, Swords Dance, a bunch of other stuff like that. Sometimes you'll see people rock like the Sub here or Swords Dance. I like Sub if you have room for it. If you have a lot of fake out cycling, like this is a cool Zacian set to use with like enough speed to outspeed like Koraidon and Miraidon. Imagine getting a free buffer on Intimidate, Zacian Bust. I know like Zacian's pretty good. I've used Zacian in 1, 2. I have like another video coming out tomorrow that uses Zacian again. I think Zacian's really good because Zacian just says like, hey, you got to bring redirection. And then they're like, cool, I'll bring redirection. And so like, you know what gets redirection? Non-restricteds, right? So if we plug in something like Follow Me, right? So like these are not restricted Pokemon. So what happens when you force people to bring this or Fake Out to deal with Zacian? They have to bring these, and then when you bring something that has like massive AoE, like a Scarf Kyogre or like a Shadow Rider or like a Terapagos, they bring this redirection, and then you just pop them with your other restrict, and they're like, oh crap, I didn't need to bring, I should have brought 2 restricteds, and it's like, aha, I forced you to bring the redirection though, and it wasn't really worth it. So like, I think Zacian's a good closer, it's a good opener, just standard damage all game. I think Zacian has the best defensive typing in the game, being Fairy Steel. It can pivot in on Dracos, it can pivot in on Dark moves, it can pivot in on Grass moves, it can pivot in on pretty much anything. It has weaknesses to Ground and Fire, yes, but you can surround that with the right teammates. I think Zacian's good. Honestly, Zacian's worse than it was. It is. Zacian is worse than it was, but I still think it's very good. I would put Zacian in the A tier. And now you're probably thinking, like, you just said Zacian had everything going for it. Why is it an S? Zacian's a lot worse than it was. The fact that you can only get Interrupt Sword once means if they intimidate you, you're really sad. Reflex, really sad. Redirection Sashmon, like Ogerpon Rock just makes Zacian like cry and really bad. That being said, Zacian's just good. It's a good mon. It's not, Zacian can't like bring you back 1v4. Like all these other, like Kyogre, Groudon, Lunala, Ho-Oh, Solgaleo, these mons can be like, yo, I can 1v3 out. Zacian can't do that. You have to like leverage advantage, and Zacian's good at taking out things before they're a problem. But it's a good mon. I think it's, if there was like an A+ tier or like a tier in between like A and S, like that's where Zacian would be, where like its own little mini tier in between them. But like, because it's like way better than things like Kyogre and Groudon, I think. But it's still in the A tier, top of the A tier, easy peasy. Taking a look at Zenta next, the defensive foil to Zacian. Zamazenta Crowned has to hold the, not Alakazam, I wish Alakazam was in the game. So here we go. Zamazenta Crown has to hold the rusted shield, gets a defense boost upon switching in once per battle. And this guy's like the thing that people, this is like the de facto guy right now. Similar to Lunala, it gets Wide Guard, and then it gets Body Press, and it can also get access to things like Snarl or Iron Defense. And it also can be built with like things like Heavy Slam, right? Or even if you wanted to be like Behemoth Bash, you can do that too. It's just good damage. Like it has 120 attack. It's a good mon. Really, really good. The fact that it gets Body Press is good. Yeah, Zamazenta had the biggest go up ever, but like realistically, every single time we see double restricted format, Zamazenta stonks shoot up. It gets a lot of the tech. The fact that it gets Snarl, Wide Guard, and like fighting coverage is what makes it good. Really, really good. I think Zamazenta is absolutely amazing in this format. You can just stick a Zamazenta on any team, and now you got the ability to play like a slightly longer game. Like remember we were talking about like Ray and Reshiram, how they're like really one-dimensional. They can just do like the one thing. You stick the Zenta on your team, and you're like, bro, this game's going at least like 5 or 6 turns, right? I have the tools to play the game at my pace now. So I think Zenta, it's not as fast as Zacian. It's 128. It's slower than its other form, its base fighting type form. But I think Zenta's really good. And also Terra Zenta is like a drastic change. Like Zenta being able to like gain just the resistance. Because like I think fighting steel is kind of not great typing, honestly. Being able to be like, instead of having a weakness of this, I gain a resistance to it. To give you like an extra turn or two on your Zenta. Really, really solid stuff. I'd put Zenta in S tier too. I would definitely put Zenta in S tier. It's behind Lunala, I think. And that might change as the formats evolve. But I definitely think Zenta is a very, very good mon. Play rough Zacian. No, I think the body press just does more. I don't think you ever need like dragon coverage from that. But it gets play rough, yeah. All right. Look at us. Look at us, baby. Look at us go. We're almost done. Let's take a look at Calyrex Ice Rider. Ice Rider Calyrex. Okay, so this thing gets as one. 2 abilities at 1. Beast Boost, which means if you get a KO, you get a boost to your attack. And no berries. So no citrus berries, no Yachi berries. You know, I remember when the Ice Riders and the Shadow Riders came out, people used to block damage by putting damage reduction berries on things. And not being able to do that is ridiculous. This thing also gets access to Glacial Lance. 120 base power, 100% accuracy, AoE move. Power creep personified, pay to win. Right? It gets Trick Room. It gets Protect. A lot of people like to build these things with clear amulets. And, like, that's fine. I tend to use these a little bit more with, like, Psy Seeds or Covert Cloak or, like, a couple other items just because, like, if you want to intimidate me, like, I'll let my other restricted deal with it. But, like, this is the standard set that you see on these guys. Look at this stat line. 100, 165, 150, 130. This thing could have a base 100 attack and still be absolutely broken. I'm not even kidding. Why is its stats this perfect? It's literally pay to win. Right? You can go Swords Dance, yeah. You can't one-shot this thing, yeah. Even if you have, like, stab, like, Heat Waves don't kill this thing, you know? Like, Reshiram Heat Wave won't kill this thing at all. Even, like, Life Orb is ridiculous. This thing's so nuts. And the fact that it gets Terra, it's one of the biggest beneficiaries of Terra being able to swap its defensive typing to say, like, you mean I don't lose to Shadow Rider now? Like, I could just be normal Terra or, like, Water Terra, and, like, I get to get a Trick Room every single time? Like, oh my gosh. Cali Ice is so nuts. In Reg G, I had Cali, I think, like, in the fringe of, like, S and A because, like, you know, it was just good, and that was basically it. But I think, like, Zenta Behemoth Bash still Okos? You know that it doesn't, right? Like, at all? Like, we can run the calc. Like, Zamazenta. Kali I. Yeah, like, what? So we're gonna Behemoth Bash. That's 30%, bro. Against an unoptimized Kali. That ain't cooking it. Not even close. And Zenta, because Zentas don't run attack. You want to run full speed, full Zenta? It's still not doing it. Heck, I'll give you one more. Zacian, bro, you can live the Behemoth Blade from a bulky Zacian, right? It's possible, right? No. Why can KO 0 HP, IV, 0 defense set? Why would they have that? What set is that? I don't even think that's possible. I don't think that that's possible. All right. Nope. Living. Straight up living. Let's go. See? Nah. Look, doesn't go down. 0-0. You want me to take out all my IVs? Bro, if I take out all my IVs, they go down. Want me to give it a... Give me like a naive... Like, what is that? Lonely nature? But there we go. I still have a shot to live, bro. Anyways, Calyrex Ice is ridiculous. Mon's obviously S tier, I think. And I think Kali I is better than Lunala in this format. Because everyone's kind of using Koraidon, Miraidon, and things like that. Those are the new Mons in Sword and Shield, or sorry, Scarlet and Violet. All the Paradox Mons that go with it. I think that Kali I you could just throw this Mon on your team and have like a ridiculous, like other hyper, you could have like a Choice Scarf Mon, like Scarf Ogre and Kali I with like one other Mon that works in TR, like busted. Oh, it's definitely better than Zenta, yeah. Zenta's a good Mon, but okay. We're going to have a poll here, everybody. First question. It's not even a question. Zenta and Shadow Rider is the most popular, one of the most popular cores right now. It is. And the other popular core is Miraidon and Ice Rider. Now the question is, if you could run Shadow Rider and Ice Rider, or instead of like Shadow Rider and Zenta, or just Ice Rider and Miraidon, instead of like, or just Ice Rider and Shadow Rider there, you would, long story short, you would just always use both riders if you could. And there's not a reason not to. I'm not wrong. I swear to you, like the base stats don't lie. The tech doesn't lie. There's a reason these Pokemon aren't in the game. You got to play a whole other game and buy its DLC just to get them. They're pay to win. They're better than everything else, right? Ice Rider is too good at what it does, yeah. So you could just run double horse, because there's a species clause. They're both technically Calyrex. Just like you can't run both Kyurem forms either. So yeah, it's too good. And we're taking a look at Shadow Rider now. So Shadow Rider is the more aggressive form. Shadow Rider here. So Shadow Rider gets 150 special attack. Sorry, 165 special attack, 150 base speed. It can be built Sash. Sometimes you see him a little bit bulkier, but it gets Astral Barrage. And then it's a beneficiary of like Expanding Force being in the game. It gets access to like Nasty Plot, Encore, Protect, Trick Room, Imprison, Draining Kiss, Terra Blast. It gets so many other different things it can do. Like Shadow Rider is kind of just nuts. This Mon you just slap this on your team and you bring it into the mid game. You get like a double KO. You get that as one boost, same ability as the Calyrex, and you just KO, right? So obviously, like we don't even really need to talk about it that much. It's also S tier, and you could be thinking to yourself, I think it's better than Ice Rider too. Why is Zenta even up here? Right, Zenta should be here. And it's like, no, I think this is like the Mount Rushmore of like stuff that's like really, really cracked. I think that these are the ones you want it to be beating. Maybe arguments could be said for like dropping one of these two down to A. But I think A, there are holes in each of these Mons that like, obviously these Mons are better than these Mons. But there are a lot of things that are wrong with these that keep them from being as good as these. How busted would the lone horses be if they got the busted spread moves? Busted. Give me Astro Barrage, Spectrier. I'll win Worlds. What's a good team to run with Ting Lu? Any of these. Ting Lu's good. Taking a look at Koraidon here. Now, I think a lot of people are really hype on Koraidon. Gets 135 base speed, 135 base attack, Orichalcum Pulse. It gives itself a steroid, and it sets a sense. So it's like a super drought. It gets Collision Course, which you can use Collision Course or Close Combat. Really, really solid stuff. And most people tend to run this guy like Fire Terra with things like all those different Photosynthesis mons, great next to Flutter, other stuff like that. They tend to run it Clear Amulet, so you don't lose to Incin. And they go like Flare Blitz, Double Dip. Sometimes they like to go with a little bit of Flame Charge. I think this guy, I've always felt this mon is underwhelming. You have to massively skill diff your opponent to make Koraidon good. And I don't think I'm wrong in saying that. For every single person that's already typing up stream saying, yeah, but Wolf Click one with this is okay. You have to be better than your opponent to make this Pokemon work. It's a hard Pokemon to make work because it has a lot of holes. It's a very big Terra Hog. It has a 4 times weakness to, like, Indeedee beats this thing. You just Dazzle and Gleam it. They're dead, right? So it's like, if Farigiraf beats this thing, you're losing to non-restricteds out here unless you're, like, actively layering up your speed control right. So it's good, but I think that there are a lot of things holding it back. It also has a lot of the same weaknesses that Zacian has, being like it's all single target damage for the most part. You could use Breaking Swipe on it, but it's not that great. I think it's okay, but I think that it's not as good as Miraidon in this format. I definitely would put it in the A tier. I think Zacian's better, though, but it's better than Kyogre in this format. Where we are right now, Koraidon is better than Kyogre. We will see if that changes. Maybe it just might be a little bit of Koraidon is good into Pagos, which is still kind of popular right now, and Koraidon enables the right teammates that make you not have to be as reliant on your restricteds. Because if you want to leave like Koraidon and Flutter, that means you're threatening speed control, having big damage, without having to utilize your second restricted yet, while still getting the value of like a fast mon. So I think it's good. I think it's better than Zacian because of enabling a lot of mons. I don't think it's better than Zacian. And, you know, you can take that with a grain of salt as someone like me who's played Zacian in multiple tournaments already. I paired it with Terapagos and Kyogre. Like, I don't think that... I think the fact that it outspeeds... Zacian outspeeds Koraidon means Zacian's better. If they're doing the exact same role, and Zacian says, I'm you, but better. I'm faster. That's a Zacian W for me. Also... Zacian doesn't just have a weakness to Kali I, and this thing does. So if I lead with this thing, I have to Terrastallize turn 1 if they lead Kali I, no matter what. No questions asked. You can just click that Lance and my game would be over. I don't like how big of a Terra Hog Koraidon is compared to Zacian. That's just my opinion. I think that's absolutely fair. Proto Spam. Well, the thing is, like, that's true, but the thing is, like, Proto Spam loses to Tailwind teammate then. Right? Because if you lead like a Photosynthesis mon in Koraidon and I lead Tailwind Zacian, I just kill you, right? And it's hard to say. There are good and bad things, but I do think that I do think Zacian has a lot going for it. Zacian hype might fall off too. Because like this guy, they both have to basically waste their items, not losing to Intimidate, right? You waste your item and you come in and they Intimidate you, and you're back down to, you know, a base 150. And with Koraidon, you have like a Clear Amulet, so same thing. Up next is Miraidon. All right, Miraidon. Does Koraidon get the attack boost from Groudon's sun? No, it gets it anytime the sun's up. Your teammate could set the sun. Once sun is up, the ability will activate, like the steroid will activate. It's Miraidon time. So Miraidon's really good. I played Scarlet, right? So it's like when I'm building, Miraidon doesn't really come to like my thoughts, but Miraidon I think is better because it's not weak to Intimidate. It gets Volt Switch to Koraidon's U-turn, right? Koraidon could get U-turn, and you could build it like bulky if you wanted, but like specs with this thing is pretty standard. I like the AV sets more, but like specs with this thing, it gets like Dazzling Gleam. It gets access to Electro Drift, which is the special attack version of Koraidon's Collision Course, and then you can just go like Draco. It gets access to Discharge. Fairy Tear is kind of how people run this. It has very similar stat line to Koraidon, being a little bit more Spadef as opposed to defense, and then the 135, 135. So it's a good mon. I like Terra Electric Scarf as well. I think it's fun. I like Scarf on this guy. So I think it's a cool mon. This plus Ice Rider is one of the best cores in the game because you can surround like all the mons that like work on the electric terrain that the Miraidon sets, like Iron Hands, Iron Bundle, and stuff like that, also work really well with Kali I. So it's just a really, really cool team. Thank you so much for the follow. I think, yeah, it also gets Snarl. I don't know if I want to put it in S tier, though. That's the thing. I think Miraidon is too smooth-brained to be an S. I know that sounds really weird. I can't just put a mon in S if, like, the only thing it does is, like, choice specs. That's like putting, like, Regidrago in, like, an S tier for, like, other formats with, like, a little bit less power. I don't think that that's like S tier worthy, because like Rillaboom checks Miraidon. Now, Rillaboom is forced into almost all the teams in this format because Miraidon exists, but if you just pivot in like Rilla, Miraidon's not doing shit anymore. They have to Volt Switch, they have to do things, and like, because of that, like, again, you know, I said like if Zacian, if there was like a middle tier, Zacian would go there. Miraidon would go there too. I think Miraidon's better, but I don't think Miraidon's an S tier mon. Am I wrong? But I would love it if we could have a discussion on this, because I think Miraidon's really good, but the fact that Miraidon gets outsped by Shadow Rider, right? Gets outvalued by Cali I. Like, Redirection Cali I just checks this. It's specs. It can't do anything else. It can't deal with Lunala. Like, it's a good mon, but it can't break in through this S tier. I don't think it's S, though. I don't think it is. I don't think that it is. I think it's a great mon. See, it chunks things, but if you're not getting the right KOs and stuff like that, it just waits to die. Its playstyle is not... Its playstyle and tempo that Miraidon likes to function at is not something that's better in Reg G. I think it's... Sorry, Reg I. I think it's much more of a Reg G playstyle people are using to transition into learning Reg I. The more that we learn about Reg I, the more Miraidon's going to fall into this A tier, which I think it's going to be in. Right? People are really trying to strong arm that Miraidon Arubega team from Reg G into Reg I, and that's where we're getting like the Miraidon Ice Rider tech, which I still think that team's going to be good, but yeah, your restricted mon should be your carries. I think so. Those are just my thoughts. So I think Miraidon's like an A tier mon. Just my thoughts. I think that if anything, Miraidon and Zenta could switch, but if Zenta's going to be S, I don't think Miraidon's in S as well. That's just how it works. Palette cleanser, Lugia time. Oh man, so I feel like I've used more Lugia than most people. Would you guys agree? Is Miraidon the better single target restricted than Zacian and Koraidon? Yes, I think it is, because it has a lot of team support, so it does more damage, and it does it on special, which means it's not weak to Intimidate. So Lugia. I've used Lugia more than like almost everybody else, I think. Obviously, multi-scale is a better ability. It gets pressure, but like Lugia can be built with like Covert Cloak. Lefties are really good on it. Obviously, like this guy gets to get played with like Protect, Calm Mind, and then like Earth Power, Aeroblast. There's only like a few different ways you can really play Lugia. You like massive screens, redirection, healing with like Lunar Blessing, Sinnoh Chaz, Pollen Puff, stuff like that. You could play Lugia maybe a couple other different ways, but like Lugia, one of the good things it has going for it is it's a 110 base speed. It's faster than most things, so you don't even need to go full speed. You just need to outspeed like base 111s. And then from there, weak offensive stats, but great defenses. I think Lugia is really good. The problem with it is things like Ice Rider, Lunala, Shadow Rider, freaking Miraidon, all just absolutely Shadow Realm the hell out of Lugia. And now your opponent can have two of them. Right? They can have, like, the most popular team in the format, one of them is Ice Rider and Miraidon, and both those check Lugia. Right? So I love Lugia, right? I love it. I've gotten championship points with it. I use it in every format. I make probably 10 Lugia teams a format, I think. And they all work to varying degrees. But that being said, Lugia has a lot of problems here in that, similar to Ho-Oh, it's other Gen 2 restricted. It's asking for a lot of permission to do things. It takes a lot of babysitting, and even if you get all that babysitting done, one crit, one status, one never lucky turn, one Aeroblast miss, and you just straight lose the game. You can outplay your opponent for like 20 turns playing Lugia and just still lose. So that being said, where do I put Lugia? It's better than Giratina and Kyurem Black. I don't think Lugia is better than Dialga. Oh, that hurts. I don't think it is. Dialga can set Trick Room, man. Dialga gets Trick Room, bro. But it's better than these. I love Lugia. It's not better than these. It's not better than this. These two are actually very similar because they're both above base 100s with single target moves that crit. This one takes 0 setup. This one takes an ungodly amount of setup. You say Zacian with a good coaching mon will go crazy. Incorrect, because coaching mons are mons that are not restricted. And so if you have a Zacian and something like a Mind Shout and your opponent leads with like Miraidon Ice Rider, you just lose the game. You got to be respectful of your opponent having 2 restricteds on the board at any time, especially if you have something with no speed control. So there's no way to really make that work. The only way would be something like protect Zacian with like a Gouging Fire and then like a Howl. That's like or like a coaching from like an Iron Valiant, like a fast coaching user, but then you're still dropping them on early. And then you're still susceptible to Intimidate cycling. So yeah, I don't think Luca's very good. Koji's good on Kali, that's correct, because you have access to like fake out and then like the redirection and other stuff like that. Terapagos. Terapagos is better than people give it credit for. I used Terapagos in a ladder tour the other day. I think Terapagos is going to be amazing in global challenges for sure, because people don't really know which Hydrant Terapagos you're running. But it's a really good mon. There's a couple different forms, right? You start out in this baby one, which you can't really use it. This is the base form one. As Terraform, you start in this one, Terra Shell. This is basically multi-scale, right? So you can set up any stat boost with this. 85 base speed's usable. If you want to go full speed timid, you outspeed things like Urshas and stuff like that are made to outspeed Shadow Riders and stuff like that if they're a +1. So like I tend to make this guy when I play aggressive. I like Specs. Specs is my favorite set on it. You make it like this and you outspeed those Urshas, right? So like an Urshifu, like a standard Ursh, like a Mystic Water Urshifu is going to be sitting right here and you outspeed them by 1. I think that's so cool, right? Think there's a way to deny him fully? What do you mean deny him fully? No, Terapagos is amazing in this format. So Terra Show means you have a built-in multi-scale if you want. You can build this guy with like Protect Lefties. It gets Meteor Beam, gets Calm Mind, obviously. I think the standard like Calm Mind, bulky, balanced Terapagos teams are going to be a lot harder to use in these formats. I think you're going to be better off with Specs, honestly, in these formats than you would be playing like the bulky pivot variant. But that being said, when you go into like the Super Terapagos form, you know, you get a lot more HP. It goes up to 160, which means you don't need a lot of investment. And then you're like, look at those defenses. 110, 110 on the same base 160. This guy's super strong, super bulky. Yeah, I think that like Terapagos is always going to have value, and being able to say like, hey, no weather, hey, no terrain, hey, none of this, like my team, you can basically use Terapagos to unlock your teammate to let them just swing out, right? So I really, really like that for Terapagos. You can pair it with like Shadow Rider. I paired it with Zacian a lot of the time, so I could just take away any like Photosynthesis mons my opponent had and just swing in hard. I like Terapagos. It's better than all these. It's better than all of these. Is Terapagos an A tier mon? Terapagos is better than Groudon. I don't think it's better than Kyogre. I think Terapagos beats Kyogre, right? But I don't think Terapagos is better than Kyogre. Yeah, I think that Meteor Beam is good because that way you can still get the +1 damage and then like have Protect, right? That's a great way to look at it. I think that's really smart. Protect, Meteor Beam, like, yeah, I think that's valuable. Yeah, the more Calyrex Shadow goes up, the issue with Terapagos is it loses the bad to the Zenta, right? And the problem with Terapagos is it's a Terra Hog. I was fighting a guy today. I was playing some games, and I led Chiyu, and he led Ice Rider and something, and his other restricted was Terapagos, and I'm like, bro, you lose. You can't terrestrialize your Ice Rider because your Terapagos needs the Terra. And I heat waved, and he died, right? And I was Specs, right? So Specs modest, right? So he just dead, and that's the Terapagos dilemma. So you need to pair that Terapagos with something that's not reliant on Terra. Things like Shadow Riders, Zacians, Miraidons to some extent. You see what I mean? You got to pair it with the right mon that aren't reliant on Terra. So the Terapagos can always be your Terra option, in my opinion. So yeah, I think Terapagos is good though. And now we got these little guys. Let's talk about what some of these can do. Because I realistically feel like they're all going to be in the bottom. But one of them, which two of these are viable? Or 3? Base Zenta. Base Zenta is viable. Yep. Yeah, Pagos plus Willow with Shadow Rider is done well. That sounds great, actually, on paper. I think Base Zenta is good. If we take a look at Base Zenta, there are things that Base Zenta gets that regular Zenta doesn't. So if you take a look at the base stats here, Base Zenta is faster than regular Zenta, 10 base speed faster. It's and it has less base defense than Spadef, but it can hold an item. So you can put like lefties or like a seeds boost on this guy if you wanted to, and just have like just fighting typing. So it's, at the end of the day, like, all right, if Zenta Crown didn't exist, and you mean we had a Pokemon that comes in and gets a +1 defense boost and gets like stab body press and has like wide guard, this Pokemon would still be usable. Not even wrong. Like, it's faster than Miraidon and Koraidon. It gets access to that Snarl, right? Like, this Pokemon is still like actually viable, right? People don't think that it is. It totally, totally is. And you can hold any item you want. You could put a Covert Cloak on it. Like, you could do anything you want with this thing. So that being said, it's better than these guys. It's better than these guys. It's probably right about here. Like, I'm not even wrong. Like, Electric Seed, I think the Electric Seed only if you pair it with Miraidon, right? But I think, like, in general, like, you could just put a lot of different stuff there. It's a good mon. It still gets the Iron Defense, doesn't it? Does it still get Iron Defense? It might not. It does. That's so nuts. Yeah, I think it's a good mon. I think it's just still a viable mon for sure. And base Kyurem's also viable. So base Kyurem, it has, like, mid levels of, like, special attack and attack. But one thing it can do is it has a higher attack or special attack. Like, it has a higher base special attack than Kyurem Black, and it has a higher base attack than Kyurem White. So if you wanted to make a mixed attacker with, like, something like a Choice Scarf, and you get this guy all the way up here, I don't even know what you take out here, but, like, you know, you would have to take, like, one of those stats, like, a little bit lower, maybe, like, I think special attack, and you get yourself, like, this fast outspeed Shadow Riders. You could run something like Shadow Ball, Freeze Dry, and then, like, I have no clue what other physical moves you want, like Outrage. You see what I mean? Like, you can make it a mixed attacker. This is best of 3 open sheet and ladder. I'm talking about all of the different things. I think that there's, like, options here. I've done this before, by the way. We entered this in a couple tours. It's fun. It's one of the, you have to definitely save it in the back. It's not great. But it's definitely usable. Yet Icicle Spear is, I think, what we had in that, like, last little spot there. But that being said, it would honestly be, like, bottom of D tier. No, it's bottom of F. Like, it's not even as good as Zekrom at all. But it's something. And Zacian, I think base form Zacian is good too, because Zacian, the only thing worth writing home about Zacian with is, yes, it's slower, but it's still faster than the other mons. It just is fairy type. So the thing that you can do with Zacian here is it can hold an item, so you can, like, you can choice band it, or you can choice scarf it. See how we have to deep into the cheese a little bit to make these sort of techs work? You also don't get the Behemoth Blade stab, right? Because it's just a fairy type. You don't even get Behemoth Blade, it's just Iron Head. So you have to play, like, a bunch of other weird moves, right? It's not good. You play, like, Wild Charge and stuff like that. Other things you could do is you could just sash it in some situations. I've seen that before. I've seen this mon. So if I were to put that mon here, it's still better than these guys. It's probably about here, right? Right there is where I would put base Zacian. Why does Kyurem White get Shadow Ball? And why not? Shadow Ball's a good move. And then with these guys, I would say Necrozma's not bad. I think base form Kyurem's better than base form Necrozma. That's just me. And then, like, honestly, I would go with these guys. So that's the list. What did you guys think of my list? This took a while to do, but I feel like I gave actual explanations for every single mon, why they're where they are in the tier list. And I feel very confident with how this worked out. Let's see. Is there any possible changes I would make? I think Mewtwo's better than these mons. I do. I just think that it is. I think that people don't usually take the time to put the Zacian or the base form Zenta in places. And yeah, I'm very happy with this list. You don't agree with Groudon or Mewtwo. That's fair. I think them being at the bottom of their respective tiers is good. Because if you look at Mewtwo, Mewtwo is better than things like Reshiram, Palkia, and Dialga. It is. It's better. So, like, you're looking at Mewtwo being like, you're thinking that Mewtwo hangs with these other mons, and it doesn't. Mewtwo just says that it's better than these. Same thing with Groudon. You think that Groudon sits at the table with the other A-tier Jedi Masters? It's like, no, Groudon's just better than things like Eternatus, Solgaleo, and stuff like that. Right? I think that's how that works. I think that's a good way to put it. Instead of saying, like, they're all equal in their tiers, because they're not, right? You got to realize Groudon's just better than Ho-Oh. That's just how that works. Like, I'm not wrong. If you guys like this sort of content and you want to see more, think about checking out the YouTube channel. We're trying to get to 50,000 subscribers. We're at 44,000 right now. We're trying to get to 50,000 before the end of the year. And I'm probably going to be doing a tier list of some sort, ranking, like, maybe you might rank all the dragon users, or rank all the different restricted cores, or rank, like, the best trick room users, or weather setters. We're going to try and do a tier list every single week. So if you guys like this sort of tier list content, and you think we know what we're talking about, drop us up on the YouTube channel. I would appreciate it.